this is the beginning, like where I set up these forms to be poured, and inside of each one of these, they have an allotment of reinforcement. All of these have what's going to become the structure. At one point, I came across a series of columns that supported a road that were being demolished, sort of at the same time. And there's like 3 or 4 of them being taken down to be remade or something. And there's all of these, and so they were T-shaped, so they're sort of standing out like this. And they were sort of demolishing from the top down, and there was all of this rebar that was standing up still with partial concrete removed. All of these boxes are basically a either 1:8 ratio. In other words, the width times the height is in a relationship that's the figure. And some of them are also a little bit taller. They might be 12 or 16 to 1. And those are based on the ideas that are in classical architecture. In other words, a Tuscan column or a Corinthian column. And just that simple movement then starts to create all sorts of possibilities. So now, what was this rigorous geometry is now offset. And that's the sort of conversation that I go through when I start breaking these apart. It sort of reveals the dynamics that sit inside of the geometry, and then also creates this sort of notion that there's structure and that there's flesh, and that it becomes more figurative. So I use this to chip away, and then I have this tool that is really cool. And it's sort of like Jaws of Life, where it opens up. Having the idea of structure and skin, the color, and then having different pieces interact with one another. And that's what kind of creates the humanity of the work, I think, that's really draws people in to look at the piece a bit more. And so, when you're looking at a piece adjacent to another one, there's this conversation that naturally happens. Or if it's in a place that's unexpected, in other words, the piece is sort of sitting in a corner, and you're like, "What? Why is it in a corner?" Well, it's misbehaved or something, and it needs to be there. It's really simple. I'm making simple boxes, putting reinforcement in there. I'm pigmenting concrete. I can't reduce this anymore. It is so straightforward. To be able to just reduce it down to the simple shape and then have something really, really dynamic come out of it is really a pleasure. They demolished a bridge and they left like 3 or 4 pieces of concrete just dangling, and they looked like figures, and they swayed like this. And I'm driving by at like 78 miles an hour going, "Oh my God, that's an installation."